Welcome to the Grampians Wine Podcast. I'm your host, Neil Butler. In each episode of the podcast, we speak to a representative of the Grampians winemakers or one of the wineries in the region. We'll learn about the wines, the wineries, and of course, the personalities associated with one of Victoria's leading wine regions. On today's episode, we speak to Damien Sheehan, the General Manager and Viticulturalist at Mount Langi Ghiran, located in Bayandine. Welcome, Damien.
How you going? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Now, the first thing, people won't have any idea where Bayandine is, so help us out by starting there.
Yeah, there's not too much at Bayandine other than ourselves and a few farms. So we're in a little valley tucked away in the Grampians region. As you're travelling from Melbourne along the Western Highway, you get to a little town called Buanga, and that's where you take a turn off the highway and head north about 7 kilometres, and you'll find the winery there at Bayandine.
It's pretty well signposted to you and one or two of the other wineries that we are speaking to in this series. So tell us about Mount Langi Ghiran and the varieties you produce, the sort of production. Tell us a bit about the winery.
Oh, the vineyard's been here since the late 60s. Three brothers, Italian brothers actually. They were immigrants living in Ararat, and they were looking for something that reminded them of their home, and they landed on Mount Langi Ghiran property, and so they planted the vines here. There's a lot of Shiraz, which is the variety that this region does so well, but we've also got quite a few other varieties. We've got Cabernet, Riesling, Pinot Gris, we've got Sangiovese, Barbera, a bit of Grenache coming on, a bit of Gamay. So there's quite a selection of other types of styles and wines that we produce. But yeah, Shiraz is definitely the main game for us.
And what sort of production do you do? How many cases a year do you do?
We produce about 35 to 40,000 cases per year. We buy fruit from outside the region. We make a Shiraz that includes fruit from some growers that we've had relationships with for a long time, and we produce Billy Shiraz. That's a lot of people know that wine. That's something we produce using growers' fruit as well as our own fruit, and then. That's so there's a fair bit of that wine that we produce because we supplement it with growers. And then off our own little blocks, we just make little parcels of this and that. Langi Shiraz is our flagship wine. That's only like 200, 300 cases per year. So that's quite small.
And I guess one question, since the vineyard was set up by Italians. Clearly, Langi Ghiran is not an Italian word. It's obviously named after a land feature. What does the word, or the phrase, Langi Ghiran actually mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, Langi Ghiran is home of the yellow-tailed black cockatoo, which is a mouthful as well. But it's, so we sit on the foothills, the eastern foothills of Mount Langi Ghiran. It sits large right in the background, it's always there. Makes it an amazing vineyard to visit because you've got the granite face of Mount Langi Ghiran, directly behind us, but and then across to the east, looking to the east, is Mount Cole, Mount Buanga, and Ben Nevis. So there's a range. It's only a 3 kilometre wide valley, so you're enclosed in this beautiful valley. Lots of trees and forest in the distance, and then the rolling valley hills that we have our vineyard on. It's a beautiful place.
So the Grampians wine region, is it fair to say you're at the sort of northern end of it? Is that fair?
Eastern end, Neil. Yeah. Eastern. So if you're travelling out of Melbourne again, if you're travelling out of Melbourne, we're the closest part of the Grampians region to Melbourne, and then you would keep going on beyond here through Ararat on your way, for example, to Great Western or other parts of the region where there's vineyards and celladors.
Okay, so what your part of the world at that eastern end of the Grampians wine region? What is it about the area that makes it a good place to grow grapes and make wine?
Yeah, again, good question, because the Grampians region, it's not incredibly not incredibly large region, but it sits along the Great Dividing Range, and that's why it produces Shiraz so well. There's a lot of great Shiraz production in Victoria that sits on the Great Dividing Range. The difference with where we are in this eastern part, I think, is partly to do with altitude. So we tend to be, might only be 50 metres higher than other parts of the region, but it's enough to sort of make it cooler. And then I think just the topography around here, as I said, we've got the Mount Langi Ghiran itself, but also the southern end of the Pyrenees range, which includes Mount Cole and Mount Ghiran. They're pretty big mountains in Australian terms, anyway. And so that topography, that sitting on the Great Dividing Range, dictates the sort of climate we have, and we've got we have warm days, but we have really cool nights. Shiraz loves that, and those really cool nights that we just sort of push us out to a little bit later harvest compared to the rest of the region, and we develop slightly different flavour profile, and the tannin gives time for the tannins, complex tannins, to build up as well in the fruit. So it's just a slightly cooler version, I guess, of what you'd see from the rest of the Grampians. Bit more pepper and spice.
Yep. Okay, so thinking forward, we're in 2021 at the moment. What does your winery look like in 2026?
2021, yes. Well, look, I mean, what we're really all about at the moment is trying to plan for the future in light not only of coming out of this pandemic, where we're looking to really expand the offerings for visitors to the region and visitors to this vineyard, so that we can really lift our game and get a bit more interaction going for visitors, so that the days of just coming into the cellar door and standing at the bar and tasting the range of wines are over. And we've got we now deliver seated tastings, but we're just looking for lots of other different things. We're opening up our old museum for people to visit there and have private tastings in there, and we're looking at a lot more hospitality type of activity as well, where people can picnic out under a chestnut grove and just enjoy this beautiful scenery that we have around the vineyard. So, yeah, we're investing in a lot in that space. We really hope we can drag lots of visitors in to discover Mount Langi Ghiran. People that have been here already, they love it and they come back. We just want to show it to more people.
Well, the last time I was there, someone turned up in a helicopter and landed in the middle of the car park, which was a bit unexpected.
Yeah, exactly right. So, and that's exactly the sort of thing people are looking for. They, especially now, they want to get out of Melbourne and go to places that they haven't seen. So, yeah, that's worked well. We're contemplating putting an airstrip in next.
Okay.
And so that's I mean, the airstrip's probably the easy part. Landing the plane could be interesting, but we'll see.
Well, we also like to find out a bit about the people we interview as well, Damien. So, thinking specifically about you, how long have you lived and worked in the Grampians wine region?
Yeah, I've been here a while now. I started in 1996, so just gone on 25 years this year. I studied viticulture, so I moved around a little bit straight out of university, but I'm from Victoria. I'm from just down the road, actually, from Ballarat. And my heart was always in this part of the world. And I really wanted to come back to Mount Langi Ghiran if I could. And I got here probably a lot earlier than I anticipated. But Trevor Mast, who was the owner and winemaker when I was put on here, he was a real inspiration to a lot of people in this industry, and me included. So we'd always stayed in touch, and I probably pestered him quite a bit to see when he'd be able to bring me on, and eventually he did. And I'm eternally grateful. So it's a beautiful place to work with, but the quality of the fruit that we actually get from here, it's unique, I think. It's such a recognisable style of Shiraz that we produce. And people were really, the wine critics, they really straight away they say, "Oh, that's a Langi Shiraz" when they look at it. It's just got so many hallmark characteristics, especially in that sort of pepper and spice that I mentioned earlier. Really delivers on that score.
I'm going to throw in a word, rotundone, just to sound like I know what I'm talking about. That's part of the game, as I understand it.
Yeah, that was research that we got involved in back in 2002. Was the first grapes that we provided to the Australian Wine Research Institute, and we kept that up for several years, sending them grapes. They just said, "Can you please send us your most peppery grapes?" And so we did that, and they had a team that could detect pepper, which in itself was not an easy thing to establish back then. So they analysed the fruit, put it through a thing called a gas chromatograph, and that eventually led them to discover a compound that they believed was a marker for this pepper character. With more research, they found that the compound had been described before from a plant, and that's where the name rotundone was derived from this plant. And so it's the first time in the world that the character that creates pepper in grapes or in anything else is rotundone. They described the compound and identified this character. So it was quite a landmark sort of piece of research, and our grapes have become well known amongst research circles for having all this pepper. But wine lovers, they also appreciate it.
I'm just impressed that I came up with a word that sounded knowledgeable this far into the podcast series. If you're going somewhere in the car and you're taking one case of wine with you for the road trip, what do you take with you?
If it's one wine only, you take the Langi Shiraz every time. If you can get it. It's not always that easy to come by.
And if you've pulled a bottle of the Langi Shiraz out, what's the meal that best complements the wine, or vice versa?
I think that lamb's pretty hard to go past. Particularly look at something like any of those sort of lamb stew type recipes. Try and add a bit of pepper in there somewhere. A pepper steak's probably a bit too obvious, isn't it? But beef meals with beef in them do pretty well as well. But lamb's a bit of a classic combination with Shiraz, and I think if you get something happening on the old slow cooker, with plenty of spices in it, it's a good match.
So where is the best place to eat that lamb dish with a bottle of Langi Shiraz?
Well, there's plenty of good places around here in the outdoors, because the Grampians offers fantastic views, but also fantastic spots to set up and have a little private picnic if you like. If you're after a hot meal, you might want to shoot into Hall's Gap. There's plenty of restaurants there that deliver great food and great experiences in that beautiful surrounds as well. But I think you can't go past setting yourself up in the great outdoors in this part of the world.
And what's the music soundtrack going in the back?
Well, We've done a lot of work with music actually. We tend towards a bit of Mozart, a bit of Brahms, to be honest.
Okay.
But you don't have to go classical. You can also go for something pretty soulful, and jazz. Jazz is probably a good pick as well, I think.
Nice work. And the three people, living or dead, that you'd want to share that meal and wine with?
Trevor Mast. He's a fantastic mentor for me, and still an inspiration for how I go about things. Kim Ludvigsen, probably not as well known to your audience, but another mentor and an absolute legend in the Grampians wine region. Really carried this region on his shoulders for quite a while. So we miss him dearly. It'd be great to have him there. And who else would I like to have that meal with? Probably my wife. Better bring her too.
Yes, yeah, she might see this episode and be a bit distressed if you don't say her. Well, before we finish, Damien, the cellar door hours, website, social media, and a repeat of where we can find Bay and Dean.
Okay, so cellar doors open 7 days a week. We 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. each day, and to get here, you just need to travelling along the Western Highway, either from Melbourne or Adelaide direction. You look out for the town Buanga on the highway, and that's where your turn off is, and you head north, and you'll find Mount Langi Ghiran. You'll also find her at the start of what we call the Rotunda Road, which you can hear about in another episode. For social media, just look for Mount Langi Ghiran, MT, LANGI GHIRAN, is our hashtag, and the website is www.langi.com.au.
Okay, well, Damien, thanks for joining us today on the Grampians Wine Podcast.
It's a pleasure. I hope to see some of your audience drop in.
Well, I hope so too as well. This has been another episode of the Grampians Wine Podcast featuring Damien Sheehan from Mount Langi Ghiran. You can subscribe to the podcast by visiting grampianswinepodcast.com.au. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but it will give you the chance to listen to previous episodes and to be reminded whenever we publish another episode. You can watch video versions of the podcast by subscribing to the Grampians Wine YouTube channel. We'll be back soon with another episode. My name is Neil Butler. I look forward to your company then. Cheers.